We want to call to session the December 11th meeting of the Planning Commission for Culpeper County. My name is Cindy Thornhill. I'm the vice chair, and I'm going to act tonight as the chair in absence of our chair, Sanford Reeves. And before we start, as we normally do, we talk a little bit about what's going on in the world. But tonight, I just want to say on behalf of the Planning Commission, happy holidays to everyone, and to have safe travels if you're traveling anywhere, and in the best wishes for 2025, which is now upon us as quick as I couldn't believe that it's here already. But anyway, happy New Year to everyone. With that, we'll get started. The first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Any additions or deletions, if anyone has any? Okay, entertain approval.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
moved and approved. Then approval of the minutes for the November 13th meeting. I'll take a motion for that. Any additions or deletions on the November 13th minutes?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. That takes us to our new business, and I'm going to defer to staff and let them carry on.
Yes, Madam Chair. We have case Z464-24-1, a request by Marvin Jenkins to rezone 10.64 acres from A1 agricultural to LI light industrial. The applicant is proposing to use the property and existing structure for a limited variety of light industrial and commercial uses in accordance with the proffer statement submitted by the applicant dated November 14th, 2024. The property is located off Hubbard's Road, Route F-715 in the Stevensburg Magisterial District. It's found on Tax Map 34, 70B, and Tax Map 35, Parcel 3.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Property that we're looking at tonight is highlighted in red on your screen there. It is a rezoning request, as Neil read into the records, case Z-464-24, request by Marvin and Vicki Jenkins. It is actually two parcels. They're hard to see on the map before you there, but they're a parcel here and then a parcel here, both largely undeveloped today. There is a building, an existing structure right there on that parcel, 35-3 today, and that will, according to the applicant, will continue to be used as a residential use primarily today with some other uses. Just to kind of explain the map and what you're seeing, which also explains the area character to a large degree. You have Route 1529, it's a 4-lane highway here in front of the parcels. There's a service road that actually parallels 29 for a good little bit at this section as well. There's access to the service road here, and then here. There's two median breaks in Route 29. You have self-storage units here, Hubbard's Run self-storage. You have other light industrial, I believe it's a painting operation that sits here. And then two of these pinkish parcels here are already zoned commercial services, and they've hosted a variety of commercial type uses over the years. The applicant before you tonight is seeking to rezone these parcels here that are around those existing commercial services parcels. The staff report talked about the comp plan, as you should. It was one of your primary guiding documents when you're looking at a rezoning. Right now, the comprehensive plan, as far as the land use section, describes this area as a mix of agricultural and commercial. Actually, if you drill down into the future land use map, we show this parcel as future commercial and this parcel to remain as agricultural, which it is zoned today. The large blue hatched area there to the north is some floodplains, a 100-year floodplains associated with streams and primarily the Rappahannock River there to the east, which is just off the screen. There's a little tiny bit on the subject property here, and the applicant did submit a concept plan as part of their rezoning. They do stay clear of that area, at least they're proposing to stay clear of that area. Staff didn't find many objections. It is a service road. There's existing industrial development around it. The comprehensive plan supports it primarily as well. We did send out, as we normally do with any rezoning application or any land use matter before the Planning Commission, to agency reviews. We did receive some comments from VDOT. We did receive some comments from the Soil and Water Conservation District. Hope you all have had a chance to look at those as part of your package for review tonight. Staff's not going to really dwell or stress any of those comments that VDOT or the Soil and Water Conservation District had, primarily because any future development would have to go through a site plan process. And a lot of the comments that were passed along, at least with this effort, would be addressed with a future site plan if the rezoning is successful with the Board of Supervisors. Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins are here in the audience. I see them sitting over there, and they'll be more than happy, I'm sure, to come up and explain what they're hoping to do. But just as the Planning Commission understands, staff is supportive of the application and what they desire to do here. We feel like it'll be a low impact use with the service road there, no direct access to Route 29. One other thing that I did want to mention, actually have the aerial here too, is largely this will not be seen. You'll see pieces of it, especially this time of year, but there is an evergreen buffer that parallels the service road. And that actually hides quite a bit of the activity that you see over here. You don't see a lot of this from 29 unless you're looking over there or if you're on the service road itself. So that's something that the applicant will maintain. They do also show an additional 50-foot off of that service road to remain vegetated as a buffer as well, which will help protect any view shed things or just setbacks in general for any structures that would be there in the future. Primarily, they want to use the site for gravel areas for storage, parking associated with truck activity, and other types of light industrial commercial uses. And with that, Madam Chair, I'll close my comments. Happy to entertain any questions, but Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, the applicants, are here too. So,
Okay, thank you, Sam. Do the commissioners have any staff questions first?
I do have one question. Sam, in the staff report, it talked about safety improvements based on the 2023 V-Trans model. What safety improvements were being asked for that?
there's a couple of different things, and they're primarily centered around, I don't know if they're actually identified solutions, but they're identified potential hot spots for safety. And they're both at both the medians for both the ends of the service road. This one to the north primarily has had some issues, not a ton lately that I'm aware of, but we have had issues in the past. It is a narrow median at that juncture. And you cannot stack a lot of vehicles inside that median. There are turn lanes for it. The other one that's just off the screen, or not, I'm sorry, not off the screen, right here, also it's a little bit wider, but there you have grade difference in 29. So it's not perfect median, but that's, Commissioner Kilby, to answer your question, those are the hot spots. And that's what is addressed in that V-Trans study, that's potential need for future improvements. Although those are not identified, what the improvements would be, either in the comp plan or with any VDOT study that I'm aware of. So,
Thank you.
Yes, Keith.
Sam, the applicant wants to retain 2 apartments that are there with the existing building. I looked through the permitted and conditional uses for light industrial and also the referenced uses for commercial services and village center. I didn't see residential in there anywhere. So is this, how are they able to keep the apartments?
they would be a grandfathered use at that point because they're existing. But you're correct. The light industrial zoning that they're seeking does not allow residential.
Anyone else here? Okay, then if the applicant or the representative would like to come forward and give us a presentation, that would be good.
Hi, I'm Vicki Jenkins. I don't know if I have a presentation,
Oh,
but I'm happy to answer any questions.
does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Burton.
Just basically, staff had some concerns about being addressed, whether you could clarify them in the proffers, or, for instance, I'm changing from asking you to asking staff. Sam, you had a concern about truck repair and sales, and then tying this to automotive repair or auto trailer sales and service. So are you asking them to use those terms somewhere in a proffer?
It would be cleaner as we move forward if the proper statement used terms that are consistent in the zoning ordinance. And that's something that, unless they knew exactly the wording of it, we can help them with that. It's, as far as we're concerned, that's a very minor issue. But it is always best if the proper statement or any application uses the exact terms that are written in the zoning ordinance so that there's less room for gray area in the future.
All right, and if they were to adapt the proffer statements, do they need to refer to that concept of the grandfathered apartment use?
As far as I'm
Or is that
concerned,
a
they
gi-
did
Is
not.
that a
That-
given based on code?
That would be a given based on code if this action is successful.
Okay, all right. So, knowing what they asked, do you all have any trouble with adapting, tweaking some words to
We do not.
clarify these things?
Yeah, and actually, Sam and Neil both have spoken to us about this and the need to make the changes in the proffer statement, and we agreed already to do that, but no, we don't have a problem with it.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Go ahead, Keith.
Thank you, ma'am, for being here. So you indicate the use of facility for truck repair and sales, or whatever the modified wording is. Is that for like tractor trailer rigs, 18-wheelers, that type of
Larger
thing?
trucks, yes.
Yeah, so will people bring the entire rig in to your facility?
No.
Or just like the cab portion?
The cab portion, and the actual business that we were looking at is the cab portion. And then sometimes you will have trailers and things that will be worked on there to put together, but it's not your tractor and trailers.
Okay.
Container trucks, those kinds of trucks.
Now, the reason I'm asking these questions is because the only thing about this that concerns me is the entrance to Hubbard's Road on one end or the other, because it's
Absolutely,
pretty
yeah.
tight, and that traffic on 29 is very quick. So if you got a big truck trying to pull out, then there's some issues. How many trucks do you think you could work on at a time? I mean, how many
I
people
don't
would you have in there?
anticipate the traffic volume to increase from what it currently is. The trucks, are bigger, but they're not, I don't look for tractor and trailers to be going in and out of there. I don't think that the traffic volume going in and out of that property, doing what we're doing compared to what's being done there now or what has been done there for the last 50 years would be a lot different. I'm certainly not a highway person or I don't do traffic counts, but just knowing what happens there now and how all of it's being used and has been used in the past, I don't see a huge amount of increase in vehicle count.
If you look at the property on Google Maps, in one of the buildings in the storage facility on the property next door, there's a little label that says heavy truck painting. Is there in fact a business like that there that you know of? I mean, that would establish a precedent for big trucks going in and out.
Yes, there is a business there that does that.
So you don't plan any new construction?
Not at this time. And if we did ever want to do new construction, we would have to come back, my understanding, with a plan to be approved.
Okay. You plan to like re-gravel the area where the trucks would be driving and I guess being parked?
It's gravelled now. I know it doesn't look like it on that picture, but it's, I don't anticipate, I mean, the plan is to keep what's gravel
Yeah.
and fresh.
And one final thing, are the two apartments on the upstairs of that building?
Correct.
Okay, that's all I've got.
Okay, anyone else? Oh, go ahead.
So a couple, similar to what Commissioner Price was asking about, in terms of the vehicular traffic. Sorry, in terms of the vehicular traffic that would go in and out of the site, how much is actually going to be stored on site? In other words, the cab is going to go into the building. The trailer may not, may sit outside or may go in. How, at any point in time, how many vehicles do you think would be sitting out on the property?
To be, I don't want to be misleading. I don't know the actual number of trucks that
I mean,
would,
are we talking like 5 to 10?
I
Are we
would say
talking
10.
like 50?
I'm thinking
I mean,
10, oh, no,
You know,
no.
I don't know how many.
10,
would sit
10
there.
is what I would envision. And that's actually what is currently at the business that wants to come there, actually. So I would say 10
Okay.
is fair.
I guess my question would be then back to Sam, I guess, in terms of, will this require any kind of industrial SWIP here for the use? And the reason I'm asking is because if you store vehicles outside, you have a potential for gas leakage, oil spills, things of that nature. And with this perennial stream that's in the back there, just making sure nothing gets out into that stream, or how is it going to be monitored? would be the question.
There's not a, there wouldn't, there wouldn't be a county ordinance that would require that, but through the site plan process, knowing the nature, which would have to be, you know, shared, you know, and that would be truck parking, it's possible through the development of that site plan process, they would have to do that. So
But if it stayed gravel the entire time, what would be the,
the gravel may or may not benefit,
Okay.
that area that Mr. Kilby's talking about, so.
Yeah, I guess the thing would be is if you did have a gas spill or something, it'd be considered like an illicit discharge DEQ for a violation. So it's just something for you to consider.
Yeah, I
there.
mean, certainly something like that would be reported, but I don't, to my knowledge, the other commercial or light industrial places that have the same thing don't have that. But I don't know if that's something that is new. But currently, all of the other ones don't have issue with that, and they have more chemicals and more hazardous waste than we would propose to have on the property, for sure.
Right. It just depends on the level, the amount of repair that the vehicle that comes in needs, you know, because it could have something damaged to the gas tank or something like that. I don't know. And then the other question I had was on, I guess the only other thing I had was on the truck turn radius at the entrances. Did someone run a truck turn just to make sure the tractor trailer can get in and out of those entrances without going into the oncoming lane?
Tractor and trailers go in and out of there a lot currently. I've seen many.
Okay. Yeah, I would just ask at the site plan level, they would show
Now,
that on
I
the
wouldn't
plan.
be able to do it, but
Your engineer would. Yes. No, I understand. Thank you.
next? Go ahead, Mr. Ziegler.
Nice, ma'am. Just a couple questions. You talked about a barbed wire fence being around the property, and that's going to be around the outside and around the two interior plots that are inside your property? I couldn't quite see on the, it's kind of hard to see on the map.
the barbed wire fence that's proposed is, is around the property.
Chain link fence that is for security purposes around the outside of it.
Chain link.
Okay, so it's around the exterior as well as around those two interior plots that are inside your property?
I think it's just around the exterior.
It may be, well, which this would still be your exterior here. I think
Yeah.
it does show.
Okay, so it does go
Yeah.
there. Okay. And that's just going to be a plain chain link fence? You're not going to put that plastic stuff in it?
No, and it's just for security. It's not for,
Okay.
it's not for privacy as much as it is for security.
Okay. The other question I had is relative to the vehicles that are going to be there. You're going to have some vehicle repair, but you're not going to do any repairs outside, are you?
No, and it's not as much vehicle repairs as it is making it so that they can hook up whatever they want to the truck. So it's not as much working on the engines as it is working on the trucks themselves to be able to make a truck so that it can haul a container versus a flatbed. Not as much working on the engines.
Okay. And again, we're talking about tractor trailers. We're not talking about trucks with cherry pickers on them that are going to be real tall and so forth.
No.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Yes.
One final thing. So, ma'am, you've seen the concerns or recommendations that staff has with your proffer statement. So you understand all those and you're willing to
Yes,
correct
sir.
all those,
Yes,
right?
sir.
And then for staff, then would we need to see the corrected proffer statement before we send it to the board with a recommendation? Or could we make a recommendation tonight, send it to the board, and then you work with her to get it fixed before it gets there?
Mr. Price, you could do either.
Okay.
You have flexibility there. I see them as relatively minor changes based on the staff's report, if you agree with that. And that's something that they could work on between now and moving forward to the board. But the planning commission has the ability to defer action and seek those changes if they're willing to do that too.
Oh, okay, all right,
So,
thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Thank you.
We'll now open the floor to any comments from the audience for a public hearing. If you would like to come up, raise your hand. When you come up, please state your name and your district for the record. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Leroy Byler.
Leroy Byler, okay.
Yes, and I'm the neighbor. I'm next door, Hubbard's Road Self Storage. I'd like to go on the record saying I do support changing the zoning of the property to what it needs to be for them to use. However, I do have a concern that I'd like to present to you tonight. The property is currently being used for storage, okay? And so we've had quite a bit of semi-truck traffic on Hubbard's Road coming in. So if I may, I'd like to approach and show you some photos. Is that okay?
Yes, you can. Or give it, wait a minute, I think you have to give it to the staff and they, do you or not?
I can certainly do that.
Mr. Byler, would you mind handing those out so we don't have to take time? Just give
Okay,
us
I'm sorry.
one. Just give us one and then you can hand it out to them.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as I said, I fully support the zoning change, but the end of Hubbard's Road, the south end, is not suitable for bringing semi-trucks in to make a U-turn off of 29. And that's happened quite a bit over the summer. And if you look at page 1, you see the U-turn that needs to be made, the first page. So if you look at the second page, this is today, and that's the semi-trucks have basically, their rear wheel goes about 10 feet off the asphalt, and it's crushed the culvert pipe. And when I contacted VDOT, a load of gravel was brought in and the hole was filled, but now the culvert pipe is clogged. So as you can see, there's no drainage. And so the third picture shows the conditions. There is just no safe entrance for a truck to make a U-turn onto that road that's going southbound on 29, and that's my concern. And so I think that the recommendation for approval would need to be, something needs to be done with that entrance.
And the VDOT people said what?
After we contacted VDOT, you can't call anybody nowadays, it's all done by computer. And so we left a complaint, and a week later, somebody dumped some gravel in the hole, blocked the entrance to the culvert pipe. But the trucks are still tracking the mud down Hubbard's Road when they come in to unload their goods. And as you can see in the second picture, sometimes the mud goes 100 feet down, 100 yards probably down the road in front of my property. And I drive on the left side of the road because I don't want to drive through the mud.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, I declare the public hearing closed. Now I come back to the commissioners and get any thoughts that you might have on that. And then, okay. You want to come back up, please?
I think, yeah, when I was speaking before about the truck turn radius, I was really talking about this property. Would you be willing at the time of site plan to show a truck turn radius that stays within the pavement area going on to 29? And if it doesn't, to this gentleman's point, would you be willing to make sure that that area is paved to have safe access for tractor trailers to turn onto 29?
I don't know that, well, we don't own that property and that's maintained by VDOT. I don't know that, our property doesn't even join that.
Doesn't your property come out and this is how the trucks would gain access onto 29?
Not from our direct property, no. Our property comes out on Hubbard's Road. And then 29 to Hubbard's Road is maintained by VDOT, and we don't own up to the entrance to 29.
Understand. It's more than likely it's in right of way, public right of way. VDOT right away?
Yes, the entrance from 29 onto Hubbard's Road, I mean, it should be up to state standards, I would say. That's already state maintained. So if there's a problem, then we need to get the highway department out there to correct it. It's not on our property, and we're not asking for, more than already is going in and out of there.
It depends on what that access point was designed for.
Right. and-
Doesn't all, it may not necessarily be designed for what types of truck that are going in and out of your property.
And we did have VDOT out, and they reviewed the site plan and the requested uses, and didn't have issue with our site plan and what we were proposing. And we did discuss paving the entrance to allow off of Hubbard's Road into our property to allow for, a better and
Turn radius,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, but I don't know that we have anything to do with coming in and out of 29 onto Hubbard's Road. It's not our property, and it's VDOT.
Have you watch vehicles come in and out at that location at all? Like, do they go into the
All the time,
dirt
yeah.
area?
Do they go into the,
Off the
some,
pavement?
they don't have to, but some do. I've seen plenty go in and out of there not going off the pavement.
Okay. It's hard to tell from the pictures, because there is water shown there. It does look like on a couple of pictures that it's a low point, that's naturally ponding water, if you would. So the elevation's clearly lower. Whether a truck goes down into the hole, it would be a challenge getting out of it. So my guess is he probably hits the corner of it just slightly, would be my guess, but I don't know. Yes, sir.
No. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Does staff have any thoughts about this issue, about how maybe to energize VDOT into doing something that might, because it's just going to get worse?
Yeah, so to that point and to Mr. Byler's point with the pictures, if I'm looking at them correctly, it does seem to be there's issues at both ends of where it comes out onto 29. It is a service road that is maintained by VDOT. We certainly, as a staff, don't mind reaching out to VDOT. I have not recently. I don't think that anyone has about maintenance concerns or issues. We certainly can do that. It looks like there is some off-tracking, that's causing or not making it any better for drainage out there. And that's something that we can work with VDOT on and that would be a maintenance issue. But to the applicant's point, they don't have control over that. They can't go out there, and I'm sure the Jenkins would do a lovely job in fixing it, but it's VDOT's right of way, it's VDOT's property, and VDOT would have to be the one to maintain that. So, but we don't mind reaching out to VDOT, and we can certainly do that. So.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. All right. What is the pleasure of the commissioners now? I will entertain a motion, or we want to talk about it some more.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, go ahead.
In regard to case number Z-464-24-1, the request to rezone tax map parcel 3470B and 35-3 in Stevensburg Magisterial District. The request to rezone from A1 agricultural to light industrial. I recommend approval with correction of the following conditions with the guidance of staff. And that would be to add to the proffers, to note the intended use is automotive repair and auto trailer sales and service. A more specific on both the concept plan and the proffer statement of the planned uses. Let's see, I'm just reading. On the plan, we'd like to see the extent of the existing gravel parking areas outlined on the rezoning plan. The applicant could provide preliminary stormwater management plan for all the proposed disturbed areas. There should be a commitment to no junk vehicles to be stored on the property. And finally, clarification that there is no outdoor storage. That's where I stop with my recommendations for
Do
approval.
I have a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, it's unanimous, so we have none opposed. We will send that on to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you all. Okay, our next agenda item is number 2, and I'll go to staff. Go ahead.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have case Z 466-24-1. It's a request by Compton and Dooling, care of Sherman Patrick, to rezone 135.58 acres known as River Knolls subdivision from R1 residential to R3 residential. The existing R1 zoning will allow for 147 residential lots by right. The applicant is proposing to use the property for 140 single-family detached units, limited in number by tendered proffers dated October 16th, 2024. The property is located off of Old Bridge Road, which is Route 622 in the Jefferson Magisterial District. It's found on Tax Map 2, Parcel 23.
Okay, Sam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the commission, the property that's seeking the rezoning is highlighted in red on this screen, the darker red, this piece right here. As you can see, a large majority of the property surrounding this existing R1 zone tract is also zoned R1 or residential. And then just a little more, Route 211, this is Old Bridge Road here, 229 to the south, and this is Stonehaven Development, Cleveridge's Village, that's developing currently. This property is seeking to rezone from R1 to R3. It's a rather, excuse me, it's a rather unique proposal, given that it's already zoned residential. And the applicant has shared in their application that the primary reason for doing this is to allow for a different style of development than what R1 would allow today. As Neil noted in reading the case, they're not seeking an increase in density or an increase in number of houses that potentially the zoning would allow. But what that R3 designation affords the applicant to potentially do would be to cluster these single-family detached lots in a different fashion, in a fashion that would reduce the footprint of the overall development, meaning that they could be on smaller lots. There would be a large amount of open space surrounding these proposed lots. There was a concept plan that the applicant submitted as well that kind of illustrates their goal in trying to achieve that. The applicant has pointed out that there are some environmental features that would be worthy of protecting instead of blasting and using to get those 140 lots proposed. So there is significant value in staff's mind to that as well. The agencies did review this just like they do, like I mentioned with the previous case. VDOT did pass along some comments. One was potentially, excuse me, looking at getting, and this is the concept plan that the applicant has proposed, and they have a separate presentation, and I'm not going to hopefully steal too much of their thunder, but this is the concept plan that the applicant is proposing today. You have 2 separate entrances proposed on Old Bridge Road. This would be an internal subdivision street with the lots lined on it. The rest of the parcel, as shown, partially shown, the whole parcel's not even shown on here, would be basically open space and not be used. It'd be open space for the development. Staff didn't find any major objections to this request. It is unique, and it is something that I haven't seen, at least in my time here. And we do have, just for a little bit of, precedent's sake, we do have other undeveloped R1 tracts along the county today. And this one is a little bit unique compared to some in the fact that it's right in the middle of a planned water and sewer service area. It has been that way for a number of years. It's shown in the comprehensive plan to be as part of a future growth area, largely due to the existing zoning, but also due to its access to public utilities. If you were to take this same request and apply it somewhere where we don't have public utilities, where there's not a future growth area designated in the comprehensive plan, that may not be the precedent you want as far as smaller lots. Here, it's a little bit different story. We have the Stonehaven development across the street. And again, it's shown as that future growth area, and then allows for a different layout that preserves a little more open space, and of course, less infrastructure as well as far as future streets, utility layouts, and the like. Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know the applicant does have a presentation, and if we're ready to jump to that, we'll need to skip out of this and pull their presentation up, but that'll take us a brief amount of time to get them in the right spot for themselves. But I'm happy to entertain questions first.
First, I need to hear from Mr. Grover. Hold on.
Madam Chair, I have a conflict of interest. I work for Bowman Consulting, which is the applicant's engineer. So I must abstain from any discussion, voting, conversation with this application.
Thank you, and so noted for the record. Okay, does the planning commissioners have any question for staff first, and then we'll let the presentation?
When you talked about public water and sewer available, in calculations for the life and build out for that plant, was this density in that calculation, or was it a different R1 density?
No, basically the master water and sewer plan is allocated, there is growth, there is allowing for the growth, which includes the R1 zoning. And that's one reason why it's key, at least in staff's opinion, that the applicant's not seeking an increase in density. There is limited capacity to any hard infrastructure, including that water and wastewater facility that we have there today. But to answer your question, yes, that was accounted for based on the R1 zoning that was there, and actually even additional properties beyond this property as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Ziegler?
Yeah, Sam, your concern areas here, those are concerns for down the road. These are not concerns with the current request. Is that
Yes,
correct?
Commissioner Zegley, you're correct. In the staff report that was posted, there were some concerns listed. They're primarily related to what I would say future subdivision potential issues. One would be this potential, it's a little bit longer cul-de-sac than what our code allows today, not by a great deal, but it also does have a future stub out here, and we have 2 access points here. But staff was, we just wanted to point out that this potentially may need a waiver based on our current subdivision standards. The other thing that VDOT pointed out that we agree with that should be looked into, that certainly can be done through a subdivision process too, is potential reservation of additional right-of-way along 622 or Old Bridge Road there. So that's just another thing that you can consider through this rezoning effort, but it's better suited for a future subdivision process. So.
This side, go ahead.
Another question. Do we know what amount of right-of-way dedication is needed based on that typical section for the roadway?
No, and it's fairly known, that the traffic counts have certainly increased, of course, but, and this will increase it, quite substantially compared to what's there today. But you also have additional traffic, that would be added, with a future subdivision that's already zoned, again, residential just to the south of Old Ridge Road as well. But there are no plans, Commissioner Kilby, to answer your question, to actually improve Old Bridge Road at this time. We may need to look at some intersection improvements, but the road itself, there actually are no plans. The thing that we would need to clarify, and I think reason maybe why VDOT recommended this, is I'm not sure if there's an adequate right-of-way there today. There may be prescriptive easement with this road, so it's something that we'll need to look at as we move forward with any subdivision. So.
Yeah, I guess my question is just because we're looking at the layout of the development, is there any impact to if they
Yeah.
do say, well, we need to get reservation or right-of-way, is it going to impact the layout and then they would have to come back?
That's a
So-
great question, but as you can kind of see that the applicant has planned for something, a bigger setback off of 622, which is a good thing. But that larger setback here would allow for future right-of-way reservation or dedication if needed. And then the rest of it is all open space. But even in front of these lots, you see that area of open space here that would allow for future dedication if needed. So
Is that like 100 feet, 50 feet?
I'd have to defer to the applicant representative. I'm not sure what that is.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Price.
Sam, the materials referenced several times to the River Ridge development. Is that the development that you were referencing on the south side of Old Bridge a minute ago? Because apparently there's some need to deconflict turning movements and stuff like that.
Yeah, River Knolls is the one we're looking at tonight. River Ridge would include this piece as well as this right here.
Okay,
Some of River Ridge is already platted. Of course, you don't have homes on all those lots. You do have a few on several of the lots, actually. But then it's been platted for a number of years, probably since the 50s. And then this is currently undeveloped, but is ripe for development based on the current zoning that's there.
for what's been platted, do you know how many homes could go there?
I don't remember, and I know we're looking at 100 and, potentially 40 here. I believe this was an additional 135,
Okay.
something like that.
One final thing, the cluster ordinance says at least 40% has to be maintained as open space, but I think this project just has 30, but they've got some trails and things planned. Were they able to get some open space credits with the trails to apply to their
They
percentage?
can do that through our ordinance. I'm not sure, looking at it, if they would need to do that, and the applicant could probably address that, but I would imagine they wouldn't even need to do that. I would think they're hitting higher than that
Okay.
based on this concept, so.
That's all I've got.
Okay, well then, let's let the applicant come up and give us their feedback and presentation, if they would. And state your name, please.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chairman and members of the commission, I'm Sherman Patrick with Compton and Dooling. I'm here this evening representing the River Knolls application. Staff has done a very thorough job representing the application, and I'll try not to be overly redundant. The property is over 135 acres, about 135.6 acres. It is currently zoned R1 residential. The present zoning of the property would allow 147 dwelling units on the property. The applicant is proposing to have R3 residential cluster zoning of the property so that they can have clustered lots, smaller lots, and more open space preservation. The open space that's proposed is 70% of the property. So it's well in excess of minimum requirements. If I could please have the second slide. Oh, okay, thank you. This is just the aerial photograph that you've seen before, showing the location of the property in proximity to Old Bridge Road and Lee Highway. The first entrance into the site is about 1,600 feet away from Old Bridge, or from Lee Highway. It does align with the entrances to the self-storage centers that are across the street. You can see the buildings in this aerial photograph. The second entrance is another 1,000 feet beyond that, and there's a question about alignment with the entrances to the other side of the road from River Ridge, and I have an exhibit that I'll show you here. The proposed density is 3.4 dwelling units per acre, which is roughly the same as it is under the existing zoning of the property. The applicant has been going through a preliminary subdivision plan process and has a layout that is approaching approval for the preliminary plan. Let me see. It's a little bit out of order, but you can see the green line that's outlining here, both at the upper half of the slide and the lower half of the layout that's proposed for this property. That is showing you very directly where the preliminary plan is currently showing disturbance of the property and actual lots within the property. So all of the area that is inside of the green line and adjacent to the current layout is area that will no longer be disturbed as a result of the rezoning of the property. Let's see. I had a preliminary plan here that I wanted to share with you. A copy of the preliminary plan. Here it is. Okay. So this is the preliminary plan that's under review right now. The entrances to the site are shown on this exhibit, and you see the spacing here as opposed to the spacing of entrances on the River Ridge property to the south of the road. The key issue there that VDOT is concerned about is to have adequate separation between the entrances. They refer to it as access management. That's their terminology. And this will fully comply with the access management requirements for the property. These entrances are in the same location as the proposed general development plan for the property. The site will be served by water and sewer there we go. Will be served by water and sewer. It is served also by the Little Fork Fire and Rescue Station and Spillman Park in terms of public services. It does have 2,600 feet of frontage on Old Bridge Road. There is adequate capacity for water to serve the site. And there was a mention made of the length of the cul-de-sac. The applicant is comfortable with staff's comment that they are not opposed to granting a waiver for the length of the cul-de-sac. It is a little bit longer, but we think the environmental benefit that would be derived from rezoning the property, using the smaller lots, disturbing less of the property makes it well worth the effort. And so with that, we are hoping to have your favorable recommendation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Do any of the commissioners want to start with questions? Go ahead, Mr. Price.
Sir, any idea what the price points are for the housing that will be built?
It's always difficult to give price points at these public meetings because a year later, the market has changed and the numbers are different. So I'm always hesitant to use a number. Is there something that you're comfortable with?
Well, would you see this as workforce housing?
No, sir. It is going to be a little bit more affordable because the lots tend to be smaller, but you're still gaining the benefit of increased privacy. And for example, and I didn't mention this in the presentation, but it was asked about, the lots are well removed from Old Bridge Road. All of the lots that you have kind of a reverse frontage design going on there. That is to give those lots privacy from the through road, but it also affords them a more than ample opportunity to do some additional dedication to the width of that public right-of-way. Right now, Old Bridge Road is a variable width right-of-way, and during the course of the subdivision review, we fully expect to address the issue of the width of that right-of-way. We do not believe that it is a prescriptive easement. We think it is a fee simple easement.
Okay, well, my point about the price point, I understand really it's not smart to try to put an exact number, but whether or not this is housing that could be expected to be within the reach of people who work nearby, people who work in the community can live here, as opposed to people who are highly paid in Northern Virginia will move here and then just commute back and forth every day.
Yes, sir. The expectation is that this would be something to be affordable to the community here.
Okay, that's great. How about parking capacity? Have you thought through the plan to the point where will there be parking on both sides of the streets, for instance?
The design of the street is sufficient to allow parallel parking on both sides of the street. The applicant does expect, though, to have driveway parking, which is the expectation of most consumers.
All right, are you going to phase the construction? Did you know over what period of time?
That hasn't been thought through all the way. We don't expect that it'll be a very significant phasing given this number of lots.
Okay, and then one final thing, this may also involve staff, but typically when we see rezonings from something into residential, then we see the developer say, we'll give this money per house for fire and police, and we think it's going to generate this many kids for the schools. And this is going from one residential category to another. So does that exempt them from having to go down that road?
It is unique, and that's why I mentioned that word early on. We don't see a lot of going from one residential classification to another, especially when you're not changing the density count. So in that case, we have an existing R1 zoned property that could yield, potentially up to 147. They're proffering to only do 140 single family. In staff's opinion, that the normal criteria that you're talking about as far as proffers for cash proffers for other things would not apply. That does not mean that it's not possible, though, through this process. So it would not be something we typically would see because the property already enjoys residential classification for up to a certain amount of density today.
I see. Had you all considered that at all? Had the developer considered that at all?
The number of units was proffered and capped the way that it was deliberately because of that sort of issue.
Yeah.
The property has been entitled for 147 lots, in fact, for quite some time, been taxed appropriately for that type of zoning. And so they have been pulling their weight, if you will, of their tax revenues for a while with this property without having any impact on county services. So we believe that this is fair, and we think it's fair also to be capped at 140 units.
Okay, all right, thanks, that's all from me.
Go ahead.
Sorry, a few questions. So I certainly understand the scope of the project, and I can understand that, you know, obviously you could go by right and have more units than what's proposed with this development here. A couple questions I had were related to traffic evaluations and things of that nature. Was there a study done for any traffic related to the development here?
The applicant has done a preliminary turning movement study for the intersections coming into the property, and turning lanes are not required, or they're not justified or warranted, as the VDOT terminology would be.
So the warrant analysis was performed, right?
And that is a normal part of the subdivision review. And yes, sir, we've done some of that work. We don't believe that it's going to show that there any turn lanes are required, but the analysis has been done.
Gotcha. So these are all going to be public roads, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So you would have to obtain VDOT approval. So if it's something that's required during the VDOT process, you would be, obviously would be required to do that.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then as far as the right-of-way dedication, are you willing to, during the subdivision process, dedicate right-of-way as needed?
Yes, sir. I think the term reservation was used,
Reservation
but yes, sir.
provided. Okay.
And the way the layout is, it doesn't conflict.
Okay. And then stormwater management facilities, do you have a plan or something, exhibit or something that shows where they're going to be located?
We
And-
don't at this time. We haven't gotten that detailed into the engineering. We know that we need to fully comply with the erosion sediment control and stormwater management, best management practices for the property, and fully intend to do that.
Okay. The reason I asked, I didn't see a note like on the GDP or anything that says stormwater management will be designed in conformance with the VRM and state standards or anything like that.
Yeah,
So I
no,
was kind of looking for that.
It will comply, yes, sir.
Okay. And then, let's see, tax map parcel 2, it's getting kind of, it looks like it's tighter adjacent to that parcel right there in the corner.
Yes, sir.
Is there any kind of buffering or anything there, or what's, like how, like I know you may have not done a grading study, but are you expecting to grade to that property line? Or are you going to have any trees there? What's going to be there to buffer that lot from any housing?
I see your question. It's my understanding that the grading has not been done to that boundary. There's some preliminary grading that's been done, of course, that it was necessary to achieve this layout. You can see that there are very large open spaces adjacent to it already. The closest point is literally a point. It's at the right rear corner of the lot. So at this time, there's no additional buffer that's proffered, but we do not anticipate that the development of the site is going to go very close to that parcel.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's all I had.
Go ahead, Mr. Zegley.
Yes, sir. I'm going to go back to this cul-de-sac exceeding 1,000 feet in length. And I heard you say that, you know, staff seems conducive with the waiver. The 1,000 feet doesn't bother me. I look at it, says it, but not service more than 15 lots. What I see up there is like over 30 lots. Is that right?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Okay.
There is an interparcel connection to the adjoining property. And that may not be the precise location of that interparcel connection, but the intent is that they would coordinate with the adjoining property owner to have an additional interparcel connection, and that would alleviate much of that concern about the length of the cul-de-sac.
Okay, and then that'll be resolved as you go through the site planning and so forth.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Burton?
I just have a question. I didn't see any specific commitment to recreational amenities or trails or soccer fields or anything. And is that for a similar reason to where you're keeping the same density and you don't need to provide that necessarily?
It is in part because the density is not changing, but it's also because with 70% open space, we anticipate that there will evolve naturally through the homeowners association of ownership of that property, a good deal of enjoyment of that public space, that shared community space that they will be able to use.
So that they, for instance, would have free reign to clear what they wanted or preserve what they wanted in terms of the forested area.
The residents would have free opportunity to utilize that space, but you're
The
asking-
HOA, I'm saying the HOA, if they voted to, whatever they vote to do, they do on their own. And in other words, you're not providing any
see.
amenities ahead of time.
So you're asking if the HOA might clear part
Are
of
there
the
any
property?
deed restrictions or any limitations
I don't know
eventually?
that we anticipated that. I think it's something that can be addressed as part of the preliminary subdivision plan. The applicant will have to, under state law, be required to prepare HOA documents. And in those HOA documents, those types of matters can be addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so a quick follow-up, Nate. So you mentioned 70% open space again. So now the graphic that's up there now says 30% open space and 70% developed area. Are you referring to 70% open space is related to the other graphic, the preliminary plan? Because that's where I got the 30% open space that I'd mentioned earlier.
I apologize. I have the numbers reversed on the slide. That's my fault.
Oh, okay. All right, so it actually is 70% open space.
Yes,
Okay,
sir, it
great.
is.
That's good. Thanks.
Anyone else? I have a question for the applicant. So the control of the development of the site is going to be in the hands of whomever is going to probably purchase this. So we don't, we normally ask for buffering around someone else's property. And there is a property there, and I don't know that there's a house on it, but it is really right up against the boundary, and I think that we should ask you in the process, and maybe it's at site plan to make sure that it happens. But I think that out of neighbor and common courtesy, you should buffer that particular parcel there.
I understand.
And then as the right-of-way gets wider on that street of Old Bridge, and you back up closer to those houses, I've seen lots of subdivisions where it's not attractive, and then I've seen over in Dominion Valley where it's very attractive because they bermed it and they landscape it, etc. So I'm hoping that you will either put that in your proffer system, or you will make sure that your purchaser takes care of that, because
Okay.
there are neighbors here that it does impact. That's my only comment.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think with that, thank you, and we'll go to a public hearing.
Thank you.
We declare the public hearing open. If you want to speak, you raise your hand. And when you come to the microphone, you give your name and your district. Yes, sir, please approach.
Good evening. My name is Tom Vetter. My wife Sue and I own the property immediately adjacent to what would be the right-hand side of this development. That's our house located just off the right property boundary edge here. We came in with 4 concerns. Water was one, loss of privacy was another, displacement of animals was a third. But the most significant one is the amount of traffic that this is going to generate on Old Bridge Road. If you look at 140 houses and you assume that there are 2 adults and some mix of teenagers, all of whom have cars, you're going to end up dealing with something like 400 cars trying to come out of that on a daily basis to go off to work or school. And then you're going to have another 400 or so cars coming home in the evening. And they all go out through those 2 exits at the bottom of this slide, and possibly at some later point, maybe out through the stub. But Old Bridge Road is a 2-lane road. It is unstriped. It has no shoulder to speak of. It has drainage ditches on both sides. It doesn't have a traffic light. It has a stop sign that allows us to egress directly on 211. We have a paved crossover to get to the opposite lane of 211 to go into Warrington. If you're going to Sperryville, you've got a right turn. 100 feet or so to the right of Old Bridge as you egress Old Bridge Road headed towards Sperryville, you've got the intersection from 211 to 229. If you could bring up the previous slide that showed the area, I can speak more directly to it. The problem is that that will do. You can sort of see it there. 211 is Lee Highway, and 229 is the stub going in from the bottom, and directly across from it is a 7-Eleven. And the 7-Eleven has a light. The evening, the traffic coming out of 211 headed for 229 backs up, and it plugs up the road completely with people trying to turn left off of Lee Highway onto 229. And you can't get out of the neighborhood because you've got a long line of cars all waiting to turn left to go down 229. This is with the existing traffic, and we have a handful of us living on Old Bridge Road. Many of us are here. The difficulty is that there is no good way to manage all of that, and you're going to throw another 400 cars into that mix every day, and there's no planning for how that's going to be handled. The other end of Old Bridge Road is quite literally a one-lane historic bridge that requires that traffic coordinate to go through it in order to get off in the other direction, headed towards Hume and points north. That isn't a viable route for much of this traffic, so all of it's going to be trying to get out through that crossover. And I don't see anything here that says that anybody has addressed that in any way, shape, or form. Now, I realize it'll probably be years before some of these houses, or indeed all of these houses, are built, but unless the county is planning to give thought to that, you're going to generate one hell of a traffic nightmare with the traffic that will be generated by just this development. Never mind the adjacent developments that you're also talking about having, and the shopping center across the road. And I think serious consideration needs to be given to how you're going to handle all of that traffic as part of the approval process for this particular parcel. Those would be my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name's Eric Thompson. I'm from the Jeffersonton District. Once again, I see us moving down the same mistakes that we've already made, looking at that eyesore that's right across, that's not associated with you guys, and I do not blame them for that eyesore, but how is this going to interact with the already proposed road changes that are being made for Stonehaven? Because that's another huge traffic jam that's coming up here. I do applaud you
Look
for
here, please.
changing.
Yes.
Sorry, I do applaud them for changing the layout. And I'll be quite honest, after reading this, I wanted to come up here and say, no, no, no. I actually like what they're planning. I think we need to take a lot more consideration on how this all interacts together going forward. Because right now we're considering each individual thing and not as a whole, which is what I think this committee really needs to start looking at. The eyesore across the street, I don't think we should approve anything until we get that fixed, and I'm sorry that it impacts other people. But 140 houses here on top of that monstrosity and what they're trying to build out there, on top of something else coming across the road, we're not prepared for that going forward. And I don't think we will be prepared for that until we put our foot down and say, no more. I know we want people coming in here with semi-high dollar, to your point, jobs to bring in tax revenue. Nobody living at 211 is going to shop in Culpeper. They're all going to shop in Fauquier County coming in from Northern Virginia. We're not going to get that sales revenue. And if we're building cheaper houses, we're not going to get the tax revenue there. And long term, we just can't keep making the same mistake over and over and over again. That was it.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Right here.
My name's Bob Schreibus. I live on Old Bridge Road. And in your, in your zoning map, I live on one of the green parcels that's RA, rural area. And just to add an exclamation point to Tom's comments, Old Bridge Road has a speed limit of 50 miles an hour. And the one traffic count that I saw recent was that there are 266 cars that use Old Bridge Road every day. Add to that 400 or whatever number, that's a heck of a lot of cars with not a very good egress on the Old Bridge end. So I think the comments are absolutely on point that this is all going to funnel to 211. And those of us that live there think and feel that that's pretty excessive.
Thank you. Lady in the back.
Good evening. I'm Victoria Thompson. I'm from the Jeffersonton District. I actually have a few notes because I've been reading this and following the different live streams you guys have been doing because I'm 25 and hearing about all these housing developments. I've been looking at that and trying to budget for a home. And I'm excited for affordable housing. I'm a manager and I still can't afford rent locally. So there's that. But my main concern is we haven't finished the development on Stonehaven yet, and we're already looking at the next one. And maybe it's because I worked with kids, but you try to finish one project before jumping into another one. And as great as everything sounds, as previously stated, we are kind of getting ahead of ourselves. We're putting the cart before the horse, and we're not looking at what tracks we're leaving behind. Another thing is we're bringing a lot of stuff for Warrenton, which is great, go Warrenton, but what about us in Culpeper? Because I know people who live in Stonehaven and other places like that, and they tend to go to Warrenton. I go, hey, let's go out to eat in Culpeper. And they're like, no, Warrenton's right down the street, super streamlined. We just turn right. So that's another concern I have for our economy because I'm paying taxes here. And like, if they're going to get raised and like all of this is going to impact my money and my finances, then what's the point of even bringing it here when we can bring it there? Another thing I'm concerned about is the availability for pricing for these homes, like how available are they actually going to be? Because Stonehaven is like $600K middle range, and that's like per house. So like, if this is for families, are they new families, pre-established families? How are we looking on these? And school zoning. Which schools are going to get these kids? How are we going to have school buses coming in and out of Old Bridge? Because from hearing from the residents of this place, and I've been taking notes as I've been listening to people speak, is this road going to be suitable for school buses coming in and out? How big are the school buses going to be? Because this is going to be 140 homes of minimum 2 kids each, maybe more depending on how big these homes are, how many bedrooms, how many kids. So like, how big are these school buses? Who's getting these kids? Culpeper, or are they going to get shipped off to Warrenton? That's just kind of my concern because school districts are out of my realm of possibility at this point, but those are things that I'm looking at because am I going to have to fight school buses on my way to work? How many school buses? Like, what about these kids? Like, you know, how's it gonna impact them? But that's pretty much all I have to state on that. They're not really so much like questions I expect answers to. It's just something I want you guys to consider and think about in the future of this because I'm keeping track of it all. And I actually left work early to be here so I could talk about this. So like, that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for this. And I hope you guys consider everything we're saying today.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. I declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners, thoughts? Go this way
I have a
first.
question for staff.
Go ahead.
Sam, what can you comment about the historic bridge and who owns it? Who paid for the restoration? Is it Fauquier or Culpeper, or is it ever a joint situation?
There was a commingling of money. There was some private, some grants, a little bit of VDOT work. It was quite the effort to get that bridge repaired to its current state so that it looks historic and maintains the historic character that it has. It is a single lane bridge. It does have a better carrying capacity than it did as far as weight goes, but not obviously width. But that is an existing VDOT maintained bridge, and it will continue to be.
Because I did hear a citizen write to us, and they're concerned about eventually this traffic volume will cause that bridge to be replaced. And I don't know if there's anything in place that it won't be replaced, or
As far as I know, on the Culpeper side of the water, we don't have any plans to do that, considering the great effort that was made recently to get that bridge to its historic nature that it is today. So
thank
I do understand the concerns related to traffic. For that, I have the same concerns. We also have zoning that's been in place, unfortunately, for probably since 1989 at least. We don't always get to choose when things are going to develop. There's not a timing for those. So I just wanted to kind of mention that too. But moving forward, the area in general, not only Old Bridge Road, but the intersections 229 and 211 will continue to be monitored for safety, volume and safety. It does rank high in the district for safety concerns now. And of course, with Stonehaven developing and anything else to the north, we'll need to continue to monitor those and work with VDOT to find solutions. So.
Mr. Ziegler, anything else, Mr. Ziegler?
Again, I guess what we're looking at here is change of zoning and a change to go from 147 units down to 140 units. We're not talking about the development of this area. That's another, in my head anyway, that's a discussion to be had later on. So I just wanted to make sure I'm thinking in the right way.
Yeah, I think you are, Commissioner Zegley. I mean, it is zoned R1 today. They could potentially yield 147 based on the 135 acres that they have at 40,000 square feet, per lot today. They are seeking a density that's slightly under what their potential is today. And I think that's a good move by the applicant. I also think it's a potentially good move to provide a larger buffering to some of our larger lots that are there to the north that are more of what I would call your rural residential that seeks to the north. So I think it is a good move by the applicant. They can't fully address everything that everyone's concerned about, either based on the conditions that exist today. But I believe what they can address, I believe that the applicant has done that through this effort. So.
Okay. Mr. Kilby?
So I guess can you pull up the previous plan, the preliminary plan or whatever the layout showed? I think Mr. Patrick had shown that on the layout there. So that's the by right plan. Is that correct?
I believe so. The applicant displayed that's one of them. There's been some iterations over many years, but that's one layout.
So essentially, if they don't do the plan that's in front of us, they could essentially pull the trigger and go and do that without coming back to us.
Yes.
I think that's something that's important for everybody to understand.
Yes.
Because in some cases, depending on where you're located, you could be getting more impacts with that layout than what we have today.
Yeah, and we agree with that, Commissioner Kilby, and you're spot on. The clustering to a tighter, it does allow for bigger buffers for the neighborhood. It's not going to solve all the transportation problems that folks spoke on, but it does solve some of the area character concerns and actually condenses the neighborhood, if you will, and actually pulls it off Old Bridge Road a little bit. As you see, those lots would back all the way up to the road in this particular layout. So there are advantages. It's not a fix for the neighborhood by any stretch of the imagination, but it is an improvement based on what they could do by right today.
Okay. And this would be more for the applicant, just a question. While it's not required, would you be willing to do a TAA prior to going to the Board of Supervisors?
Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, Mr. Kilby is asking if we could do a TIA in this case. The number of trips that are being generated are not substantial in terms of TIA analysis. And in addition to that, it's simply not required. It's a huge additional expense. You would not think it would be as expensive and burdensome as it is, but it is. It's a problem. So, no, sir, the applicant, given the fact that they are not increasing density, doesn't see that it's feasible to do a TIA.
Okay.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
guess a lot of times what I've seen in the past is if you're having more than 100 AM or peak PM traffic, a lot of times you're looking at the actual traffic counts, especially if it's over 1,000 vehicles per day, which this would be.
Yeah, this is very
So-
close to that threshold.
Yeah, it is.
And the fact that it is already approvable with the density that it is, makes it.
So I understand where you're coming from. I also understand where the public's coming from. That's why I asked the
Sure,
question.
I
because-
understand.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Engineer, please.
Hello, my name is Roddy Reyes. I'm with Bowman. To add to that, Clevenger's has provided a TIA that included this development
Okay,
since it was already zoned. So there's already been a study done for this
based on the
corridor.
147 units?
Yes, based on the
Oh,
100%.
okay. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, that part I didn't know. So that's good information.
Thank you, Roddy.
And then the other thing would be is are you willing to buffer that one lot that we spoke about before? Sure.
I think that Ms. Thornhill hit the nail on the head. Being a good neighbor, we want to make sure that we're not unduly burdening that lot next to us.
Yeah, because you're going to create, when you start taking the stumpage off that wooded track,
Yeah.
you're going to create a lot of racket, whether it's
Understood.
dust, dirt, whatever. So,
We fully intend to be good neighbors.
thank you, sir.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Keith.
Madam Chair, just for the record, that was Kevin Breeden. He's part of the application, so.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'll sum up some of the points that others have said. It's R1 now. It could have 147 units built on it, and then we wouldn't have the benefit of a public hearing like this to discuss it. So it seems to me that it's a better move to rezone it, lock in the 140 with the cluster option, because then whoever buys it after will have to comply with that. And I think that puts us in a better place than we are now. And then we'll still see the site plan on this one, Sam, and we can then, we
No.
will not see the site plan?
No, you will not. Anything after this stage with the subdivision would be a ministerial act, meaning that it would be administration. Now, VDOT's still going to have their review, DEQ for stormwater, soil and water conservation district for erosion and sediment control, environmental services for public utilities. So there's a pretty intense review process. It just does not involve the planning commission for that stage.
I still think taking it down to 140 units with the cluster option and then locking in subsequent owners to comply with that, I think puts us in a better position than we are now.
Okay. Anyone else here at the planning commission level? Okay, what's your pleasure?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion for case Z 466-24-1, request from zoning R1 residential to R3 residential with cluster, basically going from what was by right from 147 to reducing that density to 140 to recommend approval, provided that the buffer as discussed during the hearing will be provided. And in addition to that, the reservation area along Old Bridge Road would be provided along with the proffers that were previously mentioned.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. That was unanimously passed. Thank you. We'll refer that to the supervisors. Next case, we'll let them get out first. Hold on. Staff, you can now go ahead and present the third case for us.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have case Z 467-24-1. It's a request by the Board of Supervisors to rezone a portion of the parcels within two established subdivisions known as Three Flags and Overlook Heights from CS Commercial Services to match the primary zoning district within the respective subdivisions of R3 residential.
Hold
and
on a
3
second.
Yes,
Close the
ma'am.
door so we can hear. Thank you. You got it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, ma'am. A request by the Board of Supervisors to rezone a portion of the parcels within 2 established subdivisions known as Three Flags and Overlook Heights from CS Commercial Services to match the primary zoning district within the respective subdivisions of R3 and Three Flags and R1 Residential and Overlook Heights. The proposed rezoning would align the zoning districts with the actual use of the properties. Three Flags is accessed from Madison Road, Route 299 in the Cedar Mountain Magisterial District. Overlook Heights is accessed from Mountain Run Lake Road, Route 718 in the Salem Magisterial District. It's found on tax map 39, parcels B11, 2, 6, and 51, tax map 50, W1A, E, F, N, 144 through 146, 149 through 154, 170 through 184, and 196 through 211.
Sam?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to use the word unique again because I already did, but this actually is a pretty special rezoning too, one that we don't see a lot of. This is a Board of Supervisors initiated zoning map amendment that you're tasked as a planning commission to review tonight. The genesis for this kind of stems from your much debated topic about residential uses in the commercial districts. As you all know, you all worked on that. The Board of Supervisors has worked on that topic. Nothing has been changed and related to those potential ordinance amendments. But one thing that was discovered through the process, as we notified everybody that was zoned commercial services, that we had several people, including folks in Three Flags that you see in the bottom right-hand corner on the screen, and then Overlook Heights there to the left or to the west behind 7-Eleven on Route 29, had a portion of those lots, 3 to 4 lots in there that were also either partially zoned CS or that first lot pretty much was primarily zoned CS. And Three Flags, this is Overlook Heights, just kind of shows those parcels. This is the 7-Eleven here. And then this is a part of an older subdivision at this point. But they're single family dwellings that have either all commercial zoning today or they're partially zoned. There's 3 parcels here. And then Three Flags, just to kind of highlight those areas, there's several in Three Flags that today are zoned CS. But their use is single family detached dwelling, which would be consistent with the majority of the rest of the subdivision that actually is zoned R3. The board is seeking Planning Commission's recommendation here to move forward in what I would call basically a cleaning of the zoning map up to basically align these subdivision and these uses with the existing zoning that's not only around it, but that is enjoyed by the existing property owners. Each of the property owners were notified as well. We've advertised it for a public hearing, Madam Chair. I gave a brief memo that just highlighted exactly what I went over, but I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Do any of the commissioners have any questions? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to come up and talk about this rezoning? Hearing none, I close the public hearing. Commissioners, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion in case number Z 467-24-1 to recommend approval of the request by the Board of Supervisors to rezone a portion of the parcel within 2 established subdivisions known as Three Flag and Overlook Heights from commercial services to match the primary zoning district within the respective subdivisions R3 residential and Three Flags and R1 residential and Overlook Heights.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor, please raise your right hand. That is unanimous. We'll pass it to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. Anything else for tonight, staff?
No, ma'am. That's all we have on the agenda. Thank
All
you.
right, well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.